Welcome to my podcast, Life with Denise, sharing inspiring conversations and heartfelt wisdom. Follow online at denisepettit.com, YouTube at Denise Pettit, and Instagram at Denise Pettit. The most dangerous person in your life isn't your enemy. It's the one who smiles at you and hopes you don't go too far. They won't stop you out loud. They'll just make sure you doubt yourself enough to stop on your own. There's a name for it. It's called crab mentality. Hi, this is Life with Denise. I'm Denise. Picture something with me, a bucket, the kind you take to the beach. Now imagine there are crabs inside, crawling all over each other, claws clicking. You don't need a lid, because the moment one crab starts climbing toward the top, the others grab it. They pull it back down. Not out of strategy, not out of malice, just their instinct, just a reaction. And that crab, it never makes it out. What if I told you that humans do the exact same thing? Today we're talking about something called crab mentality, and you're going to recognize it in your workplace, in your family, in your neighborhood, maybe even in yourself. So what exactly is crab mentality? At its core, it's a social phenomenon. It describes what happens when people in a group, a community, a team, maybe even a family, start to undermine anyone among them who begins to rise, who starts to succeed, who dares to do something different or better. Instead of celebrating that person, instead of maybe even following their lead, people pull them down. They gossip, they criticize, they minimize, they sabotage. And the unspoken message is always the same. If I can't have it, neither can you. Or sometimes it's even more subtle than that. Sometimes it might sound like, who do you think you are? Well, you've changed. Or maybe, don't forget where you come from. Or maybe it's something like this. I think you're just getting a little too big for your boots. Or maybe, like I learned in the South, I think you're getting a little too big for your britches. You've heard those before, right? Well, maybe you've even said them. The term itself, crab mentality, is believed to have come from observations of actual crabs in a fishing bucket. Marine biologists and fishermen have long noted that if you put one single crab in a bucket, you'll need a lid because it's going to climb right out. But when you put multiple crabs in the same bucket, no lid is needed because as one crab climbs, the others instinctively grab hold and drag it back down. So none escape. And here's the irony. It's really not intentional cruelty. The crabs aren't trying to trap each other. They're just reacting, which makes it even more unsettling when you see the same pattern in people. Because unlike crabs, we have the capacity to choose differently. And yet, so often, we don't. Let me tell you about the first time that I went crabbing. You know, I've had experiences, what we used to call drudging for worms, putting them in the bucket to sell them for fishing bait, or catching crawdads and using those for, actually I had a school project where we had to bring in crawdads. I've been fishing for catfish or whatever else we could catch. Those experiences were in the deep South, in creeks, in rivers, and muddy creek banks. But crabbing in the bay of the Atlantic Ocean, that was something I had never done. As I climbed into a small boat at 5 a.m., it was kind of like a little rowboat, very small. The fisherman showed me the trap, a flat, wiry thing, and explained how it works. I became a little worried, but the three friends that I was with on the boat assured me that it would be fun. Now, this boat did not have a motor. It was a rowboat. But they knew the spots. They knew the gear. They knew the whole thing. So I took a deep breath and we headed out. We loaded the bait on the cage, pulled them up, dropped them down into the water, let them down, and then we waited. And then we pulled them up. And sure enough, there were crabs in the basket. It was a pretty good catch, too. We tossed them from that basket into the basket in the boat. And right there, one by one, in the boat. And then we just headed back to shore and loaded the car with our bucket full of crabs that we had caught. I started to feel like a pro then. But now here's where it gets funny. We got back home, and really none of us wanted to cook them. I was looking up at their little eyes, and I just couldn't cook them. Couldn't throw them in boiling water and then cook them, although I do love to eat crabs. We're standing there looking at that basket full of live crabs, and we said, well, now what? We don't want them to die in vain. So we did what any reasonable people would do. We drove to a restaurant, and we sold them to the restaurant. They gave us $1 a crab. We walked away with over $40 and zero cooking. It was a great day. But here's what stayed with me, and it didn't hit me until later. Those crabs in the basket, they weren't going anywhere. We didn't even need a lid. We didn't need to watch them because every time one started to make a move, the others pulled it back. Claws hooked in, dead weight. I remember thinking, if they would just all help each other and stop grabbing each other, they could make it out. But that image never left me because I've actually seen it in people ever since. This dynamic happens every single day in schools, in offices, in families. And here's what makes crab mentality so insidious. It almost never looks like what it actually is. It disguises itself as loyalty, as keeping it real, as it's protecting the group. You might hear things like, well, I'm just looking out for you. Or maybe someone would say, I just don't want you to get hurt. Or maybe you've heard this line, well, I'm the only one who's going to be honest with you. But if we strip away that language, and what's underneath, it's fear, insecurity, a scarcity mindset that says, if you succeed, well, somehow there's less for me. But here's what I want to push back a little on people doing the pulling. Because whether it's rooted in trauma, in scarcity, in insecurity, the impact is still the same. You're choosing, consciously or not, to be a lid on someone else's bucket. And that is not neutral. That costs people. It costs them their confidence, their ambitions, sometimes even their relationships with the communities that they love. There's a quote I keep coming back to. I really don't know who first said it, but it says something like this. A rising tide lifts all boats. What if we all actually lived that way? What if someone in your circle winning felt like you were winning too? What if the crab that escaped the bucket turned around and helped the others out? Well, now let's talk about the person on the receiving end of the crab claw. If you're someone who's growing, evolving, reaching, and you're feeling the pull, I want to say something to you. First, it's real. Don't gaslight yourself into thinking that you're imagining it or that you're being arrogant. Crab mentality is real, it's documented, and it hurts. Second, it's not about you. I know that sounds cliche, but I mean it literally. The people pulling you down are not responding to who you are. They're responding to how your growth makes them feel about themselves. That's their work to do, not yours. And third, you get to decide who gets a front row seat to your life. Proximity is not the same as loyalty. Just because someone has been in your life a long time doesn't mean they're entitled to access your future. And finally, protect your vision. There's something uniquely dangerous about sharing your dreams with people who are threatened by them. Not everyone deserves to know what you're building before it's built. Be selective. Be wise. And for the people who maybe, just maybe, have been the crab, well, honestly, at some point, most of us have. There's been a moment where someone we knew got something we wanted. And instead of feeling happy for them, well, we felt something smaller, something pettier. That's human. But the question is, what do you do with it? Do you follow that feeling with gossip, into sabotage, or into quiet resentment? Or do you just get curious about it? Do you ask yourself, what does their success tell me about what I actually want? And then use that information. Jealousy can be reframed. It's just a compass. It actually points at what matters to you. The problem isn't feeling it. The problem is weaponizing it against someone else. We live in a world that often feels like a bucket. There's limited resources, competitive markets, hierarchies that seem to be designed to keep certain people at the bottom. The bucket is a story. It's a frame, and frames can be changed. What would it look like to build a culture in your family, or maybe your workplace, your friendships, where someone else's win is cause for celebration, not suspicion? What would it look like to be genuinely excited when someone you know breaks through? Because here's the secret the crabs in the bucket never figure out. When one of them makes it out, they could just reach back in. They could show the others the way. They could change the whole equation. But only if the others let them. Crab mentality keeps everyone stuck. The one that's being pulled down, obviously, but also the ones that are doing the pulling. Because every bit of energy spent tearing someone else down is energy not spent on your own climb. The only way any of us get out of the bucket is together. Thank you so much for listening today. If this episode hit close to home in any direction, I'd love to hear from you. And if you know someone who might need to hear this message, share it. Drop it in a group chat. Send it to a friend who's been clawed at lately. Or maybe someone who needs a gentle mirror. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is just name what's happening. Thanks for sharing this time with me as we journey together. This is Life with Denise. I'm Denise, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to Life with Denise, sharing inspiring conversations and heartfelt wisdom. Follow online at denisepettit.com, YouTube at Denise Pettit, Instagram at Denise Pettit. See you next time.